Hey y'all, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Tim, we got Brian on set today, and y'all get excited because this is the 10 at 10 for September 14th of 2023. That means we bring 10 new trees to our website, actually 20. Check the email. You can sign up for our weekly emails on MrMaple.com. And guys, 20 new plants coming to the website at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's for all y'all people who are watching this video live. They're not going to be on the website until 10 a.m. We always have people saying, hey, where's it at? It's like, it's 9:30, dude. Wait till 10, they'll be on the website.
And as you know, Mr. Maple, we're always bringing it, man. We got some killer cultivars lined up for you guys today. I'm excited to be here and find out what's going on this table. There's a lot of things going on here at Mr. Maple. I'm excited to be a part of it.
And guys, we're just really close to Buckholz week. So get excited. There's a lot of walkthroughs of Buckholz Nursery, of the gardens. Guys, we did cultivar highlights, the top 5 most outrageous plants at Buckholz Nursery. So get excited, hashtag Buckholz week, coming soon to you on the Mr. Maple Show.
Make sure you like and subscribe because you don't want to miss Buckholz week, man.
So Brian, which side do you want to start on this morning?
Let's start down here, dude.
All right.
What we got, Tim?
Guys, we got Ueno-yama, sometimes referred to as Ueno-amari. We got word from our friends in Japan that it actually means the same thing. I mean, if you think about it, you're flying into Japan, there's this huge mountain there. And it's Mount Fuji, and it's gorgeous, and that's sort of the pride of Japan. Well, Ueno-yama is kind of like saying Ueno-amari. Ueno-amari is the pride of Ueno. Ueno-yama is Ueno Mountain. Same thing. But what Ueno Park is in Japan is it's the spring flowering where all the cherry trees light up, and that's what you get with Ueno-yama. Is you get a tree that has that spring flowering interest with some really good color.
I mean, this thing comes out with some really nice oranges and yellows on that spring color, man. I always love watching this one wake up in the spring. It kind of lets you know everything's about to get exciting out there in your garden. A really nice upright tree also. I mean, this thing is going to give you a nice presence out in the garden. Great colors, man. I love this thing.
Yeah, it's the harbinger of spring. You get some really nice oranges to yellows. Then you can really get some nice oranges to reds in the fall. Good light green summery fill during the summer. It's one of these plants that's one of the first trees to leaf out, but oddly enough for us, it rarely gets any frost damage. I mean, here in Western North Carolina, it leafs out and puts on a great display. My dad always says they have antifreeze when they first, in their veins when they first leaf out. And there's something to that, because this one leafs out really quickly, but rarely ever gets any frost damage to it.
Definitely. Awesome plant, man, for sure.
What do we got next, Brian?
All right, next up, man, I really like this plant. You guys are going to love this one. This is Acer palmatum elegans.
Brian, what do you like about elegans?
You know, the elegans really puts on some really cool colors. It goes through a lot of changes, but what my favorite thing I like about it is that Matsumure leaf on it. It's got a nice, just feathery feel when it gets out there in the garden. I mean, just the texture of that leaf is one of my favorite leaf shapes in all of Japanese maple. So I really like that about elegans.
You're so right. I mean, there's so many lace leaf forms, which are a variety of Matsumure, right, but there aren't that many Matsumure selections out there. And this is one of the ones that's noted for having some of the best fall colors.
Yeah.
When Matt went and visited over at Western Bird Arboretum with Peter Gregory and Hugh Angus. And he told me that the winner of the fall color photo contest almost every year was someone who took a photo of Acer palmatum elegans. And it's because you can get some really nice shades of red to purple infused with green, some yellow in there. So it has some outrageous fall colors. And because of that, at Western Bird Arboretum, people would line up and wait to be able to take photos of Acer palmatum elegans to enter in that photo contest.
Absolutely. And don't sleep on the spring color either, because this thing comes out like a salmon pink and then fading to this green color. But like I said, man, this thing really gives you a different texture out in the garden. I'm always trying to look at contrasting in colors and textures and things like that. So elegans definitely fits the bill for that.
Awesome plant.
Big sizes too, man.
Yeah, some great sizes on the 1 gallons of elegans right now. So guys, next up, we've got Acer palmatum Ariadne.
Ariadne, I mean, this one right here, when it comes to reticulated types, it definitely kind of sets that bar. I mean, this thing really has some nice kind of pink and yellow spring color to it with that veining in that leaf. It really makes a strong presence out there. One of my favorite reticulated types.
I remember when Matt and I were sitting eating Indian food with Cor Van Gelderen in Philadelphia, and I was sitting there, I'm like, I got to figure this out because, hey, you know, you introduced Ariadne, so was this named after the Greek goddess of the maize? Because our description's like, you'll get lost in the in the etching veins because it has that sort of ghost series reticulated kind of style foliage. And he laughed. He said, "No, that's my daughter." And I just remember like, oh, yeah, of course. He's got Reuben. He's got all these amazing selections he's introduced in the nursery trade. Of course, Ariadne is one of his kids as well. He's got a pretty large family, though. I mean, he's got so many amazing plants. Estville Nursery, classic nursery there in Oregon. But it has some really unique serrations to the foliage. Love Ariadne.
Yeah, I remember back in Oklahoma in my garden there, I remember my wife started looking at pictures of this one. She really liked this, so I actually wound up buying one of these for my wife back in our garden there. It does really good. It needs some protection from the hot afternoon sun, but it'll really hold that color if you give it just that a little bit of extra protection from that sun. It'll hold that color longer in the spring. All right, this one right here is pretty cool. I like the concept of this one. Tim, what do we got?
Guys, we got Acer palmatum English lace.
English lace, man. This is kind of like the closest thing you can get to a red lace leaf upright. I mean, it's not quite as upright as like Cereus, but it has that upright habit to it. I love the concept of that. To be able to get that true like red lace leaf upright like Cereus, we're still kind of hunting for that, but this comes about as close as you can get to it.
I know, we've grown a lot of red upright lace leaves that claim to be the red upright Cereus. If you stake this one and point it in the right direction, it gets a really nice upright shape to it. It was a selection by some of our good friends from Quilcene, Washington. And Matt and I heard of this tree and we said, man, we've got to have this. So this was introduced by the same guy who introduced you, Katie. Matt and I got a hold of this tree early. We were able to evaluate it, put it into the nursery trade, and we had an English lace and an English lace #1 and a #2. English 1 wasn't as good as #2, so #2 became the straight English lace. I mean, this is such a really nice form. It was found as a chance seedling from Sumanagashi, of all plants.
Yeah.
Because it's an upright Matsumuri, and then when you look through it, you can find some lace leaves, and it has a really good vigor to it. To me, this is the most vigorous red lace leaf. So if you don't stake it, it's a great companion plant out there to something like a Germain's gyration.
Yeah.
Because you've got one that's going to make a specimen really quickly, and with English lace, it's also going to make a specimen really quickly as well if you just let it sprawl out and cascade.
One thing about this one too, if you really want to accentuate that kind of semi-upright habit, you can prune that and kind of encourage that upward movement on that. I'd like to see that done, but if you look at the pictures on this cultivar online, there are a couple examples in there of some really, really nice upright forms of this plant, and it just creates such an interesting feel, you know, for a lace leaf to be nice and tall like that.
If you're trying to get some of that cloud style pruning that people do for bonsai, but they often do it in the lace leaves in the landscape as well, an excellent one to do it with because it's vigorous, but at the same time, it has more of an upright habit. So it's easier to train into shape into some of those, you know, cloud-like style pruning.
Absolutely. Beautiful cultivar here. All right, man, I'm excited about this one. We got Acer palmatum Ilarion.
Y'all, selection by Talon Buchholz. Love what this tree does in the garden.
Man, I mean, variegated Japanese maples are insane. You get some of the craziest colors. It almost feels like it's not real a lot of times when you see it. I love taking pictures of these because I like to capture that moment when it's just leafing out. It's got this bright pink color with the greens and whites all together. I mean, this thing just really puts on a show in the garden.
And it is a plant that gives you that summertime interest. The spring is variegation's nice, but in the summer months when a lot of other plants are looking a little more drab, these Arita no Nishiki styles like Ilarion put on some of the prettiest colors on their foliage during that time of the season. Right now, we've got some light pinks to creamy white on this plant. Give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun if you get a whole lot of white on there, because that variegation will burn in full sunlight. But this is such an amazing plant. Named by Talon Buchholz after a guy named Ilarion who worked for him. He said Ilarion was a great hard worker, one of the best workers we ever had. And Ilarion found this tree out there in the seedling evaluations, and this tree got introduced, and I'm sure glad it did.
Absolutely, man. The variegated types, we've got a video about this. If you give these some light pruning in the spring before they leaf out, it really encourages that variegation on that, so you can continuously get that beautiful show of variegation every year.
Yeah, awesome plant. Give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun, but it's a tree that's a rock star in the garden.
All right, so you know me, I'm a big time collector, and I see this one, I'm like, Tim, I've never heard of this one. You got to tell me all about it, man.
So this is a plant that we thought was mythical, and it kind of was. When we first started chasing down this plant, there were photos online of this plant with this almost punctile style leaf, and the new growth off of it looked like a lace leaf. And I was like, what in the world is this? And it does have a little bit more divided summer new growth that can look a little more Matsumuri, but it definitely is more of your typical red linerlobum style Japanese maple. Bright reds to deep maroons in the spring, and it gives you some nice oranges to reds in the fall.
The linerlobum cultivars are really outstanding. It gives you a really interesting texture out there in the garden. A lot of people who may not know plants real well would be hard convinced that this is a Japanese maple just because the leaves are so different from your standard palmatum leaf. I love that. It gives you a nice texture out in the garden, and it kind of gives you that bamboo-like feel to it. I know we say that a lot, but it really does give that extra appeal out in the garden. It makes everything else around it kind of look different because of this plant right here.
In traditional Japanese gardening, you're trying to get the essence of Japan in your garden, and this does this in a very airy, upright form, fairly narrow. This is a tree that's going to be awesome because it just gives you that unique texture out there in the garden.
Yeah.
Pair this something like a Japonicum, and you're going to have some crazy contrast with the texture of the foliage.
Absolutely. Some nice bright red new growth on that. I'm liking this one. All right, so here's another great dwarf right here. Tim, what do we got?
We got Acer palmatum, Little Sango.
I love the dwarfs because my garden is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because I've planted so many trees in it. So
how many trees have you planted, Brian?
I'm probably around 150 Japanese maples right now.
And what's the acreage?
0.25, about a quarter of a lot. So it's small, but I've done a lot of dwarfs. My concept has always kind of been plant an upright and then dwarfs around it, and then an upright and a dwarf around it.
I like it.
So it's kind of giving myself some space. But a dwarf coral bark, Little Sango, this is cool.
Yeah, selection by Talon Buckholtz. The name Little Sango, as it suggests, means that this was found as a dwarf witch's broom on Sangokaku. It's got a little bit of a twist to the foliage. Yeah. The foliage isn't with short and center nodes like something like Flagellaheim. I think that Flagellaheim is one of our top trees not to grow. It's got a horrible name, can barely pronounce it, FJEHLEIM or something like that. I mean, it's horrible, but the tree dies on us. Little Sango doesn't. Gives you everything you like about that. 6 to 8 foot in 10 years. Some people will say 4 to 6 foot in 10 years. And it gives you that winter interest with the coral bark Japanese maple. And
Tim, you're absolutely right. I've always noticed that with this one is that each leaf has a little bit different just texture to it. Like they're kind of misshaped and deformed looking leaves. Each one is different on that. I like that. It kind of gives it a different feel than your standard like broom or whatever. It kind of gives you a little bit different look on that with the coral bark interest. I mean, that's super cool, man. All right. I love the weeping Japanese maples. Today we've got Acer palmatum Hoshizora.
Man, I felt so cool. Matt and I got to go visit Kobayashi Momiji in Japan. They introduced Tamukiyama, Ryusin, tons of amazing plants. Their nursery's been in existence for over 300 years. You've probably heard us talk about this, but we went and visited them and we were like, man, this is so cool. And the guy who was our translator who went with us the first time couldn't believe that Kobayashi Momiji knew who we were because we were a small nursery, but we'd said good things about Kobayashi Momiji and about their cool introductions, gave them credit, and they thought that was really cool.
Everybody knows who MrMaple is. I'm crazy about Japanese maples, man. I've been the biggest fan ever, but you know, this plant right here really does remind me of that Ryusin style. You can stake this up, get some height with it, let it weep down, or you can let it just cascade over the ground. I mean, there's so many different ways you can use this plant in your landscape. I love that, man. I love kind of planting it on a hill and just letting it flow over that. It creates such an interesting design. Like, you'll never see two of these that look the same. I love that about this style of plant.
Now, Matt and I, we were on an episode of Nippon ni Ikitai, and we went back after visiting the first time at Kobayashi Momiji. And when we went there, the Jiro wasn't there, but his son was. And his son came out and basically gave us this tree and said, hey, get this into the nursery trade. So I was really excited about Hoshizora. He said it has a very different fall color from Ryusin. I believe Ryusin for them typically goes a little more oranges. You'll see some on our website. This one is said to go more of that bold red.
Very cool plant, man. I love this. All right, this is one that's been on my list for a while, so this is coming available, guys. This is exciting. Here we got a nice little Don Redwood. What do we got, Tim?
We got Daweswood Tawny Fleece. It's a mouthful. It was named by a committee at the Daweswood Arboretum, and you see when you have committees name things, it can get a little long. Yeah. But this tree here, selection by the Dawes Arboretum, has a really nice bronze color to the foliage. It was found as a witch's broom. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Dawn Redwoods, but there was this collection that they did years ago, and they thought they were extinct. They went out there to this valley and found Dawn redwoods, collected them, brought them back to Europe, to Tennessee, to New York, and basically these trees became all the selections that people know today. And when that happened, I mean, Ogon, you know, White Spot, Sherman's Northerlick, all those came from that lineage of that first collection.
That's awesome.
The neat thing about this one is the Dawes Arboretum went back and did a different collection of Dawn redwoods. And this was on one of the trees that had really long needles. So it has longer needles than many of the other selections of Dawn redwoods. But then a witch's broom formed on it. Man. And that's what became Daweswood Tawny Fleece.
And this thing does have some electric colors. I mean, for a Dawn redwood, I mean, this gets me excited just because, I mean, I captured some pictures during the spring, man. This thing, it really lights up. I love that bronze color it gets with that green kind of highlight throughout. And then you get that dwarf habit on that as well. I mean, pair this with like a Sherman's Northerlick. I mean, these two things are going to just glow out there in your garden. I love this plant.
Now, what I love about the Dawn redwoods is you can take them and put in wetter spots in your garden. So your Japanese maples, they need good drainage. We preach that constantly. Make sure you give Japanese maples good drainage. A Dawn redwood, it can go in that wetter spot in the garden and give you an ornamental appeal out there. They are a deciduous conifer. That means they lose their needles during the winter. So don't be worried when this thing drops its needles. But as this thing matures, you get the red wood like you do on those big giant redwoods. That gives it a really unique interest.
Absolutely. It gets a nice bronze color on that fall color too before it drops leaves. I love that.
So Brian, we've got a ginkgo on both sides of our table, some 3 gallons.
Yeah, we got some big ones here.
And guys, we've got Ginkgo biloba Golden Globe.
Love the ginkgos, man. They give you such a great like prehistoric feel out in the garden. I mean, these trees are ancient, you know. It's like, it's something really special to have one of these. I've got a couple of dwarfs. I don't know if I have room for the globe, but I definitely recommend getting a ginkgo because it really provides a lot of unique texture and kind of breaks up everything else. I mean, there's no other leaf out there in the world that looks like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really cool plant. It's salt tolerant, pollution tolerant, drought tolerant. It's from the fossil ages. I mean, it's an old specimen out there in the landscape. But these things, they just give electric yellow fall color, which pairs so well with the Japanese maples because many of the Japanese maples go to oranges and reds. So great tree to pair out there in the landscape. Give your ginkgos lime, allows them to take up water, nutrients, and fertilizers more efficiently. So always remember, give your ginkgos lime.
Love the fall color on these, man. It's going to make all your maples really stand out when this thing goes yellow. So definitely add one to your garden.
So guys, that was our 10 at 10 for this Tuesday. Y'all, make sure to jump in at 10 a.m. Many of these trees will sell out fast, so make sure you check out fast. Don't just add them to your cart. Unfortunately, our website doesn't hold it for you until you complete that checkout process.
Man, I'm glad to be here today because I'm always get excited about awesome plants, and we're always bringing awesome plants every single week. So you guys make sure you like, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we give you the listing of the 10, but there's actually 20 on the email. So sign up for that weekly email.
Take care.
God bless.
And have an awesome day.